Adam, I once told a joke about infinity, and I never heard the end of it.
Hi, guys.
Hello. I think these jokes are getting worse, aren't they? Yeah. Right, so we're back again with our worst episode marathon. Yay. Spoiler warning to anyone who hasn't seen all of the new series. Cool. Yep, you clicked off now. We both think the worst episode of Doctor Who we've ever seen is Hellbent. If you disagree with that, then what you should do is leave us a comment on what you think is worse, and we will have to defend it. And
That's fair. I think that's fair. And when we eventually get to the Hellbent in the main series, we'll have a lot to say, and we'll probably take these comments into consideration and mention them and stuff. Yeah.
because I think it's our mission to justify side by side why we think it's the worst. Because it's one thing to say that you don't like it, but it's also another thing to prove it.
Yes. Absolutely. Like, we understand that this episode does have a following, so we want to hear that side of it, so we don't just say our opinion without taking into consideration the other side of things. But be warned, we do have very, very strong opinions of this episode.
And so if you'd like to challenge us, send in a comment of an episode you think is worse from the new series, and we will have to the best of our ability, defend why it's better than Hellbent.
Even if it's an episode that we don't like, which is going to make it especially challenging.
There's a few episodes that are going to be difficult to defend, but we will have to do it. But of course, this series is based around trying to find the worst episode, and obviously because we've seen all the new series, we're going to be watching Classic Who to find those worst ones. Right now on the screen there's a list of all the episodes we're going to be watching. We've already watched The Leisure Hive. That was pretty interesting. And I'm scared to see if it gets worse than that. I'm sure it does. So, if you think there are any classic stories that we should add to this list, leave a comment and tell us why. We might not necessarily watch it, and if it's one that I think shouldn't be on this list, I'm going to tell you why, especially if I've already seen it, because I know there's some episodes that are very unpopular that I actually quite like, and they won't be on this marathon. So yeah, let's just do that. So today we're going to be watching Arc of Infinity, which I've never seen, but I know a bit about. Apparently it's got Omega in it. I have seen The Three Doctors, but it was about 6 years ago. So hopefully I remember what this character's all about. And I've also seen Earthshock and Snake Dance, so that I sort of have like an idea of what's going on in this time period. But yeah, from what I've heard, this story's not the best, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, let's get into it. Yes. I haven't seen all of Arc of Infinity. I've seen the first 2 episodes of Arc of Infinity. I have seen The Three Doctors as well. I'm very fond of Time Lord lore, so I am familiar with Omega. So I have enough of an understanding of where he was when I last saw him and who he is to be able to understand what's going on.
And I think we're going to agree The Three Doctors is just brilliant. It's a pretty great story. Right, so how about we dive right into Arc of Infinity and see what it's all about. Cool. So here we have the Time Flight Arc of Infinity box set, and obviously we're going to be watching both these stories in this series. Yay. So we've got a nice red box. It definitely stands out on the shelf, I'd say. And we've got a picture of Tegan getting in the way of the Doctor, as she does. Very Clara-esque. Oops, spoilers. So, let's see. This Arc of Infinity DVD, it kind of looks like a painting, actually, from what it looks like, but
It kind of look. I think it's just composited images that they've fiddled with.
Yeah.
Hang on, there's lights.
There
we go.
Tegan looks like Steve from Blue's Clues in this. That's pretty funny. Is this Omega?
Yes.
Right, he kind of looks different.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit different.
Yeah.
In the Three Doctors, he looked like an assassin.
With a pyramid on his head.
An Egyptian assassin. In this one, he kind of looks like a bee. I don't know what that's about, but I guess we'll find out. Okay, that's interesting. We've got lots of Time Lords here. Let's see. Okay. So it must be 2007. So this is one of the newer DVDs with the this is the I think it's the British disc covering on it.
Yes.
Usually the New Zealand ones have like the round things on it.
Yes, yeah.
But this is the British one with the artwork on it. So I must have gotten it shipped from Britain.
Yeah.
Or some collector had it in like Australia or something. Cool. So we'll get into this. Johnny Byrne.
Part 1.
I believe he wrote. I've written it down somewhere, but yeah.
Yes, we are ready to begin. Excellent.
Most ingenious Time Lord.
So this is a series opener, actually. Season 20.
And the Five Doctors was the season finale, eh?
Well, it was actually the King's Demons, but the Five Doctors aired later in the year.
Oh, right. Oh, because it was a one-off thing there.
Yeah.
But it was part of this season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the same as Dave the Doctor.
Yeah.
Let's see if it works.
What was that? What happened?
What?
What were they looking at?
They were just repairing a scanner, I think you said?
Very, very random bit of exposition.
Yeah.
Where are we?
I've forgotten about this bit. I want to say...
Telephone.
I'll see you at the airport tomorrow.
Oh, is this the faceless ones? I can love the faceless ones. It's such a shame no one sees it because it's a mostly missing story.
Yeah.
It's like a 6-parter and there's only one surviving.
Yeah.
But it's so good. I would argue its quality is as good as Terra of the Zygons.
Wow.
And it's the same idea
Sort of,
as well,
yeah,
the
yeah.
chameleon people cloning thing.
Excellent.
It's just, I mean, the ending's a bit rushed, but it's at an airport.
It's a shame about most of the missing episodes because a lot of the missing episodes sound like interesting stories as well.
Oh, Evil of the Daleks. Oh, Daleks Master Plan, Fury from the Deep. So many good ones.
Now we have nothing to look at. Couldn't be better. This is right. But not the booster element. Why?
Why? He's very much a hand actor.
It's interesting how much Davison's costume is echoed in Tennant's costume. They've got the same aesthetics, like the jacket, cape thing.
And the running shoes.
With the fat pants that wave around.
Yeah. I forgot about that subplot.
Hey, where are you going? Just follow me.
What the these actors are terrible. Where are you going?
Just follow me!
Is this
Colin.
Dora the Explorer or something? This way!
Swiping,
not
swiping.
This way!
We found it. Are you serious about staying the night here? Cool.
Are you serious about staying the night here?
Are they Australian?
One of them is, I think.
Ah.
The other one's British.
Oh, is this like Tegan's brothers or something?
Could be.
Doctor, I have to go back to Heathrow. The TARDIS.
Keen on the neighbours.
Neighbours.
Oh. Ooh. Ooh, Time Lord Batman. Gee, that's very shaky.
Yeah.
Fucking Daleks.
It reminds me of the opening of The Unicorn and the Wasp.
Yeah.
Oh, it's you! Wait! No! That's impossible! Ah!
Oh, those are some funky sleeping bags.
That guy has a sinister way of delivering his lines. At least take your boots off.
I don't know why they're in the story yet.
No. He keeps going. And the way he sits down, like... His voice is nowhere near as cool as the other Omega.
Well, it's kind of like the difference between Pertwee and Davison.
Yeah. You're simply a través de polarity of neutron flare.
Pertwee's just got a flair to him that Davison lacks.
Mm.
Whoa.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Oh.
Whoa. Homage to Time Flight. Why do all these stories have to have weird exposure? What is that?
Oh no.
It looks like a sports ad. Oh! Is he consuming the doctor?
I can't do the normal noise because I got a sore throat.
Where are they camping out again?
They're in a crypt slash, like, by the sewer, I think?
No, it's probably just a poo, mate. Oh, look at those yellow socks. Can't take my eyes off them.
I actually quite like the set design. What? I don't remember this at all.
What?
Oh my god, that's an amazing creature! I completely forgot about
It's
it.
like a mix of the nucleus and a dinosaur.
It's a bit like Rodan from
It's like
Godzilla.
the nucleus grew up and became a form.
Gotta love technobabble.
I feel like
Haha.
the 10th Doctor's really good at doing technobabble.
Yeah, David Tennant has this sort of flair to...
Yeah. He makes it somehow make sense.
Because it kind of has this sort of, like, when you're asking, like, say someone giving you technical advice or something, you're like...
And then sometimes... Yeah. What's he wearing?
You couldn't have done another take!
Wow. He's wearing like white socks. He's wearing like a Mufti Day T-shirt as well. Like when you're like 7 and you
Yeah.
just wear whatever you can. He's very skinny. Red. That is like the generic. That's the generic child sleepover like attire.
Yeah. That's the same shot, I'm pretty sure, as when it emerged last time.
Oh! Is that a weeping angel? Could be.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Red roulette is what his shirt says.
Maybe it's a band or something.
What? What is that? Do you reckon there's a connection between the Antimatter and the Three Doctors and the Antimatter and Planet of Evil?
Yeah, it could be.
Could be.
Also, do you recognise the actor who was in the background there? Hang on, wait for it to cut back. The guy in orange.
Oh, that's
Michael Goth, who played...
Celestial Toymaker.
That's the one.
That episode.
I'm pretty sure he came back for Big Finish audio as
He's
well.
married to Katie Manning.
Ah!
Cosby magnetism. Shut the fuck up.
I think the only reason they had the redesign is because had Omega tried to take over the Doctor here, immediately he would have recognized him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
It just looks weird now.
Yeah. And also, at this point in the story, the audience isn't supposed to know it's Omega.
Yeah.
We just know because
Yeah.
we know.
Actually, now that I think about it, it's actually closer to the original Omega was Delgado, and this is Anthony Ainley.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Those are cool gloves. Here comes the best part of the episode.
It's the Sixth Doctor.
Feed this into the mic.
Arrest him, please. And only I am to have access.
He's so good.
When the TARDIS arrives, they'll be waiting outside.
How the hell he can be taken seriously while swearing that, I don't know. But then again,
Yeah.
look at his
He's
Doctor.
such a good actor.
He's found
That
that.
actor is the Sixth Doctor, the one after Davison. So we've got 3 plots going on,
Gallifrey, the Doctor being attempted to be taken over by,
and these
these guys-
socks people in a sewer.
yeah, and who's seen these antimatter creatures or whatever they are
Right.
coming through that doorway that didn't used to be there, and for some reason
I
they're
don't
just
get how you can have antimatter creatures.
because they're from the antimatter.
Like the one from Planet of Evil makes sense.
and same with Omega in
Because it's-
the 3 Doctors because he's in his own universe.
Yeah, it's an amalgamation of antimatter coming to attack you in Planet of Evil. Whereas in this, it's things coming out of an antimatter world. I don't know.
And there's
Ah. Whoa.
Yes, I was about to inform you.
My TARDIS.
I'm simply following orders.
he's so good.
So he's so much of a better actor than some of the other people in this. Like these kids.
Yeah.
Straight out of green stuff. No, they just ruined it.
The security compound in the heart of the Citadel.
The Citadel. Yeah. Somewhere tardy.
Quickly!
If you say quickly, then suddenly things seem more urgent.
His cousin will arrive at Schiphol Airport tomorrow morning at 10:30.
Oh.
Ah, that's right.
Oh. I can take him. I thought so. I knew it had to have something to do with something.
Yeah. I mean, she's on the box.
Yeah.
So.
The Talons of Wing Chang, that storyline is Jaggler and Lightfoot.
Yeah.
White socks and yellow socks. Are they going to have
A Big Finish spin-off.
Antimatter Chronicles?
That's actually quite a cool name.
Yeah.
This way.
That was a very tenanty mannerism.
Yeah, it was, eh? Oh, wow, this way.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm the Doctor.
Not for long.
Oh. Yo. Killed by the Sixth Doctor.
It's definitely less exciting than the first episode of The Leisure Hive, but I think it's more more focused.
There was a lot of setup.
Yeah,
A lot of setup.
but it wasn't. It was like each story had a focus,
Yeah.
and like when it jumped between them, it
Yeah.
did. Other than when it jumped to the guys.
I'm less confused
Yeah.
by this one, but I'm also less entertained.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
It's not as snappy of a story.
Yeah,
Like
it's okay.
for me, because this first episode was decent, and then as soon as Colin Baker showed up, I was just big grin on my face because whenever he's on screen, he's
Yeah.
just dynamic. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, we'll see.
okay, so we just watched part 1.
Yes.
I don't know what to say about it.
It's definitely, that episode was definitely all set up.
Yeah.
All set up for things to come.
It definitely lacks a certain something.
A flare, a spark.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have.
Especially because this is the first episode of the season as well.
It doesn't have like a big creative hook.
Yeah.
Like it's. As I said when he came on screen, Colin Baker is like the saving grace of that episode for me because I just think he's even when he's not playing the Doctor, he's just such a presence.
Yeah.
And at this point, we're not supposed to know it's Omega, so it's still.
Yeah.
But I think part of the reason why we aren't as enthralled by this episode is because part of the mystery, like the big twist, we already know.
Yeah.
We know it's Omega.
That's true.
So it's not like because we're just kind of waiting for the Doctor to realize it's Omega and whatever happens from there.
Yeah.
It's like we figured it out. Well, we didn't. Yeah.
And it was, I think one of the commenters mentioned the massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve has an issue where it's like the entire story, you know where it's going, and the entire story is built around the fact that Stephen Taylor doesn't know where it's going, but you already know, so it's kind of like
just get to the point.
Just get to the point, and and also because obviously it's a missing story, so it just drags. But yeah, this I don't know. There was a couple of interesting elements to it.
I don't think it was by any means terrible or bad.
I think for people at the time, there's that little hint in there that Tegan's coming back. So if you're a fan of Tegan, then because I know Tegan has fans, so I know that. Like for example, if it was series 11, right, and there was like this tease that Bill Potts was going to be in the episode after the first one or whatever. Yeah, like there was this tease that she was. I mean, obviously we wouldn't really want that because of what happened, but like I just imagine. Or actually, no, perfect example. Series 4. You look at like when Martha came back in the Sontaran stratagem, right?
And that was. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I love it.
But it's that kind of thing where it's like, oh, okay, they're coming back. Yeah.
Well, also when we get to that Martha thing, I'm going to have a lot of defending to do.
Yeah. So there's a couple of interesting things in there, but really, I don't think there was a lot.
No.
And interestingly enough, the storyline I was most interested in was the one with the worst acting, and that was with the
guys
the
and
White Sox and the Yellow Sox. Yeah.
The gate
I
opening.
actually found that quite interesting, but the acting was just appalling.
Yeah, it was weird. It was really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very wooden. I can't really say much about part 1. Just got to get on with it and see what happens with the rest of the story.
Absolutely. On to part 2.
On to part 2. Oh, what? Okay.
It was a stun gun.
Each and every time the Doctor returns to Gallifrey, there's violence.
Oh. This is the Doctor's TARDIS, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
You must have proper medical attention.
He'll recover.
I do like this idea that the Doctor's face can sometimes come from people he's seen. So, who's the Lord President right now?
The guy who the thing that floated up. The guy who was sitting in that chair in the thing. The Matrix.
But
Keith.
who is it?
I can't remember his name. That dude.
Is it just like an insert politician here character?
I believe so. I don't think he's a recurring
It's
character.
not like a Rassilon. Yeah.
No, I wish.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Is this
shot's going on for way too long? You could have just had that last couple of seconds.
So, just for a bit of information.
Yeah.
Obviously, I haven't seen Time Flight.
Yeah.
You've seen Time Flight, right?
Ages ago, though. Yeah, but yes.
Do you remember why Tegan leaves?
I want to say like she's just like, this is too much, I can't handle it, or something.
Yeah. Okay.
I think something like that.
Because obviously Adric just died.
Yeah, I think that's what she's. I think she just says, "No, Doctor, I can't do this anymore." I think, unless I'm getting her confused.
Because
with someone
obviously
else,
she
but-
does say that in Resurrection of the Daleks
Yeah.
when she actually fucking leaves.
Yeah.
2 seasons later.
Oh god, she is like the classic Clara.
Yeah.
But something like that, unless I'm getting confused with another episode, but I think she just says it too much. To be honest, I don't really remember much about Time Flight beyond really shoddy green screen.
Yeah. I don't get what makes Tegan such a big deal. But, whatever. I'm a Rose fan, so I can't talk at all.
Yeah.
He's got those douchebaggy gloves.
When did you last see Colin?
About 2 seconds ago, he was just on screen.
You're not going to believe this.
God, look at his eyes.
You're not going to believe this.
Do you believe the theory that the Celestial Toymaker's a Time Lord?
I could see, like, it's not one that I necessarily believe, but I could see where they're coming from with it.
Yeah.
Romana chose to stay in E-space. That's all past history.
Yeah. Back when the show was fun.
Yeah. Oh, it's Prison Barusa.
Was he in The Deadly Assassin?
No, he was in the Five Doctors.
Oh, right.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure
I've
that's
seen that recently too,
Yeah.
but don't remember. A lot of the Time Lords, they are just forgettable to me.
No.
They're all the same.
No, yeah, no. I'm pretty sure Barusa's who's the bad guy in the Five Doctors.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, well, I mean, Rassilon.
I mean, yes,
Yes.
but Barusa's the one who's like, I will immortality.
Wait, does he get sucked into Rassilon's little?
Yeah, he's the one who gets put on the tomb.
Oh yeah.
The tomb of Rassilon. He who shall win shall lose.
Marvellous, isn't it? First
Marvellous.
my job. Not to worry, I think. I'll go and see my favourite cousin, cheer myself up. Now this.
That was a weird. The thing is,
He's just such a whiny bitch.
the thing is about this story is, I'm super interested in the creature this guy encountered, but not this guy, and I'm really interested in the Gallifrey politics.
Yeah.
I know I get why it can be super boring to a lot of people, but I just love seeing the way Gallifrey functions.
So do I, but
Yeah.
then it's distracted by fucking Tegan.
That's what I'm saying. Is that whenever Tegan's on screen, it just really takes away
Oh
from.
well, I miss my cousin.
See, the thing is, we would be so much more invested did we not know exactly who it was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still invested.
Yeah. It's an interesting story, it's just that the twist... I love his little hand gesture as he pushed open the door.
Yeah, I think the fact that Colin Baker is the Sixth Doctor has a retroactive effect on this as well.
Yeah. It sort of ties into the Peter Capaldi thing of choosing faces. I mean, there's always a treader at work on Gallifrey, that's always the twist, but it's always interesting. Well, not always, but I'm a sucker for Gallifrey. I don't know what it is about this guy's performance, but it's just... he doesn't look like he's looking at her, if that makes sense. Or something.
The direction is not good in those outside scenes.
Even the direction's not that inspired. It's very... through the motions. It's not like the Leisure Hive where it was creative.
Well, it feels like this storyline and the other storyline have different production teams working on it.
Yeah. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Politics.
But that's it. That's what I like about the story is that I like the inner bickering and the workings of the morality in question and everything of the Gallifrey politics, and also just Colin Baker
And Omega. And Davison gets caught up in it all because he's a pacifist.
Yeah, which is, I mean, Davison's character in a not so interesting story is really uninteresting. But when he's faced with conflict, which is part of the reason why Caves of Androzani I think is one of the best pieces of television ever written. Is
Did he just put the Philosopher's Stone in his pocket?
yeah, but Davison is best when he's up against direct conflict and put in these situations.
If I'm to die, I want to prepare myself mentally. For that, I need to be alone.
I'm to die. I'm to be you.
It will be far from dignified and painless.
Maxill's great.
Wouldn't she be crying?
Yeah, oh no, my cousin's either dead or something horrible's happened to him.
Oh,
Ah,
and I'm just going to complain about it.
bugger. Bloody struth. That's a cool shot.
Ooh.
I like uses of mirrors.
Ooh. It kind of hints that he's lying, you know, when you see the back of him.
Yeah.
What news of my old companion, Leela?
Leela.
Yeah.
Very fan wanky.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, obviously, no, she was in The Invasion of Time. That's the other Gallifrey story from the Baker era. I forgot about that one. Haven't seen it yet. It's going to be on the list, though. The Invasion of Time.
So yeah, they like to reference the history of the show, like
Wow.
yeah, like when the Cybermen did this, and when Leela and Romana and which is good. Continuity. There's nothing wrong with continuity.
Yeah.
So long as it doesn't affect, like, so long as it doesn't become,
As long as you don't get it wrong.
and also as long as it doesn't overbear the main story that's going on, being told in this particular story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Magician's Apprentice.
Whenever they cut back to this Tegan story, I just don't care, because I'm just like, I'm really interested in the Doctor's being,
Yeah.
he's going for appeal.
Apparently
so
this is how some people feel about the parting of the ways. You
Oh,
know, how
yeah.
it cuts back
Yes.
to Rose and Jackie and stuff.
But the Parting of the Ways spends way less time there.
And it's, in my opinion, is far more engaging.
And it's important as well to the story,
Yeah.
whereas this, I mean, granted I haven't seen episodes 3 and 4, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe Tegan turns into a sun god.
Maybe.
It's a lot of setting up.
Yeah.
Oh,
Precisely
jeez.
as you have been instructed. To the control.
Looks like a paintball uniform.
Yeah. The thing is about this new design of Omega is, as I said before, for the sake of the audience not immediately figuring out who it is, they needed to change the way he looks. But I
Make him look very bouncy and
But I do not like this design of Omega. I can see how on paper it would look interesting, but in execution it looks big and clunky and not intimidating. Whereas the other Omega was really like the fact that he's sort of like he looked like a hollow shell
yeah,
was really interesting.
yeah. There's nothing hollow about this Omega.
No.
He looks very juicy.
Yeah.
And he's wearing the hat now too.
This one empowers you to carry out judgment. That's bring the doctor forward.
Oh my god.
Align scan coordinates.
God. Why is all the focus like right there?
On his codpiece,
right
yeah.
there? Is he submitting or is he lying?
Good question.
Activate booster terminal.
Terminal. It is, yeah,
Jesus.
yeah.
Omega's let himself go a bit.
Yeah.
So, is the Doctor possessed by Omega?
Can't recall.
Who knows?
As I've said, this is beyond this point. I haven't seen episode 3 and 4.
Right. Oh. So, Nissa cries for that, but Tegan doesn't cry when, you know, her cousin maybe died.
Yep.
Fucking Tegan.
Bloody hell.
Bloody hell. More of the same, I think.
More setting up. Things are starting to happen now.
Yeah.
Things are starting to happen now, but it's still just, it's a very slow burn. And if these next 2 episodes don't do something interesting with the story, then its main fault will be that there's no urgency, there's no drive.
It's a very so far this has felt like a very nothing story.
Yeah. Even though there's a lot going on, like the way they've written it or the way they've paced it is very... Yeah.
I don't feel a lot about it one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm very ambivalent.
Yeah.
Except like this... Like, I'm super invested in like when the Time Lords are bickering, but that's only such a small part of the story.
Yeah.
And I don't like the Omega redesign.
No. Definitely not. Time for part 3. The most crucial part.
Oh, that's right.
That guy's voice sounds like Tom Baker.
I hope you know what you've done.
I'm going to my room! Telling Daddy. Oh, I forgot about this. This is when Clara comes in.
Yep.
Yeah. Doctor! What is this? Is this the Matrix? That's how you dodge those.
Yeah.
So this is supposed to be control? Is this like the thing they were doing in the leisure home where it was like...
Weak, but he'll live. You did well, Time Lord.
Well, Time Lord.
In the termination area, shielded by an enemy.
No, don't go to Tegan. Go back to Omega. Go back to Omega. He's way more interesting.
Oh, so we slept?
I must have missed the line they explained why the hell they slept in a sewer.
Well, they're looking for Tegan, so that's where she belongs. Oh, we look in the sewer, we might find her.
Tegan may be annoying, but next to this guy, she looks like the best.
Yeah, true. This guy's weird.
I really don't like his redesign.
It just doesn't look right.
No.
Omega should be intimidating.
Yeah, and just he's over designed. The brilliance about Omega's original design is it's really simple.
Yeah.
Like it's big, but it's simple. And just the expressionless eye holes and mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Just really, really neat design.
Yeah, it was almost akin to the Cyberman, actually.
You should come with me.
I demand.
Move.
Do as I say. Yellow socks.
Yay!
It does look painful.
Yeah.
It's like he's been...
You transmitted the doctor's mind.
No.
But you knew.
Oh, fucking Tegan.
Yay! Hey! Hey!
Oh man.
Jesus. That is related to the nucleus, I think. By the looks of it.
Yeah.
If you cooperate, you will come to
I do not like this design.
of doing the same.
I love that thing's design. I do not like. Actually, the design would be okay if it was for something else. For Omega, it's just too much. It's just too over the top.
The termination aroused suspicion, but the High Chancellor...
Swish and flick.
Hang on, do we know who this character is yet?
No, I don't think so. I think this is whoever it was that gave them the bioscan of the Doctor, whichever high member of the council it is, which I have a feeling it's probably going to be Michael Goff, because he's the one who's being so friendly to him, so there'd be a twist.
Can be persuaded not.
I think the worst part's the sides. If they got rid of the sides, it wouldn't be...
If it was slim, if it didn't have the big spherical bits on there.
It just got a pulsating face. Yeah, it looks very silly.
I actually quite like the jittering effect. And that's what I like about this, is even though the guy who seemed like he was an outward bad guy, he's actually wanting to just solve the problem, and he just believes that the Doctor was guilty. So he's not like just an out-and-out evil dude. He's just trying to find the truth, and he believes the wrong truth. Just tell him you're Omega already.
More cock teasing. Poor old Yellow Socks. That's a very Baker mannerism. Yeah.
Too much.
Yeah.
The residential wings are clear. My men are nothing can get in.
Not until they find the doctor.
We must prepare. I need more time.
Wow.
We must generate sufficient power for transfer.
Jesus, it's taking fucking ages.
Yeah.
It's not that it's boring,
Yeah.
it's just they're just teasing it for so long.
Yeah, it's like, we know who he is, which is a big sort of detriment to the story. We know who this is, but B, it's just, the pacing is at a snail's pace. It's a real crawl.
Well, you called it.
You were right, Doctor.
I wonder how many times the words "you were right, Doctor" has been used in this series.
Severe temporal distortion.
Nissa.
Just in case.
That's sort of playing into the overarching sort of narrative that the Doctor's always surrounded by violence, the Fifth Doctor.
Yeah.
Not you, not
How did he not see that before?
I don't know, I kind of feel like
What are you doing?
Gallifreyans having generic human guns is kind of a...
You don't believe this stuff, not
Yeah,
Be careful.
It's not what I imagine them as.
no. That's why I'm so interested in guys like Omega and Rassilon, is because they're above all that.
Yeah. Rassilon's got his big glove.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I mean, like, 5 Doctors Rassilon, not...
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. Though, granted, I do love Timothy Dalton as Rassilon, but we'll... Side.
Timothy Dalton's Rassilon is closer to, like, Thanos than you know...
Though Thanos is pretty cool and collected, whereas Timothy Dalton's...
The heartbeat of a Time Lord.
The end of time itself! I will not die! He's great. He's also the best James Bond. Fight me.
Us all to give us mastery of time, and was shamefully abandoned in return. Will be carried out.
Oh no.
Wait, hang on, that was a little bit confusing. How he was revealed as the villain, but then he wasn't the villain.
It was just serving Omega.
Right.
He was a sub-boss.
Okay. And that's the real boss.
Yeah, who just took over the Matrix.
Okay, so it finally got revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Mediocre.
Mediocre.
Yeah. It's a very...
Passive.
Yeah.
It's not... It's a good story, but it's passively told.
It's not that it's not that you could cut, because there's stories that have padding where it's like if you cut an episode off it, it would be better. It's not that. It's just it needs to be
focused.
redone in a way that it's
It feels like it needs another draft of all the scripts, just so they're a bit pacier, just so it gets to the point a bit more, just so the political intrigue is a bit higher and more tense.
And I also feel like the drama is too low.
Yeah, like, because the thing is, all these elements are really interesting, like the political espionage and resurrecting an old, like the first Time Lord, if you will, even though technically Rassilon was the first Time Lord, but semantics. But that whole thing, it's just really interesting elements, but not very interestingly told.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it becomes in a sort of middle ground where it's just fine.
Yeah. There's not enough suspense.
It'd be better as a book, like a novelization.
Yeah. I feel like I'm getting dumped with all this information that's interesting, but the way the characters react to it, it's just kind of
low energy.
It's like it's any other story.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose this is more nitpicky than really anything, but the Omega redesign, just beyond just for the sake of the story, keeping it a surprise of who he was. And I don't know how much of our lack of sort of excitement is the fact that we knew it was Omega all along.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing is, we've seen the Doctor get more angry about less important things. Like,
because this is a big deal. This is a big deal. He's
exactly.
like, but it's still just like,
This should be like, if Russell T Davies was doing Arc of Infinity, like the amount of
dramatic music
hype,
and
the amount of hype he would put into Omega's return,
like things would be exploding around it as he took over the Matrix, and
it would be like a Utopia moment where they turn the pocket watch. It would be like one of those moments where it's like,
when they say,
it's Omega.
You know who he is, Doctor. It's Omega. Dun, 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 dun.
It'd be something like that. I feel like that's what the story needed, but it was just mediocre.
Yeah.
Right, I guess we'll get on to part 4 then.
Make it or break it.
I just don't know what they can do with the story now that it's...
Just have the confrontation between Omega and the Doctor feel special, but I don't know. I don't know how you'd do that. Yeah.
It's really lacking energy.
Yeah, it's because it's not a bad story, but they're kind of bad episodes. Like it's bad television, good story. But there are a lot of elements I do like about it. Like obviously Maxwell, Colin Baker's just such a dynamic presence. But he's the most energetic thing about this whole story.
Well, I mean, you could argue so is Tegan, but that's for a different reason.
Yeah.
Your friend is dead.
Your friend is dead. Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Some fire. Did you put your name into the goblet of fire? Harry Potter, did you put your name into the goblet of fire? Oh, so that's the thing that connects you to the Matrix.
Yep, cool. Got it.
You won.
Okay. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Tell him the precise location and you will die.
Blind traits. Yeah, don't tell Tegan to show up. That's not going to happen.
Don't worry. Tegan's unharmed.
He's acting very odd.
Yeah, he's actually showing some character.
I have a feeling Omega's done something to him.
You notice when the fifth Doctor, when he works the TARDIS, it's very similar to the way like a cricketer handles.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
I think a lot of the problems with this episode come down to the stale direction.
Yeah.
Like, because
it's very bland.
Yeah, because like there's no, at least Leisure Hive, there was some flair to the direction.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it's very just point and shoot.
Yeah, it's just so
stale.
Yeah.
Whereas the story itself lends itself to being really creative and interesting. but it's just not. Graham Harper, this director, is not. Unless it turns out it actually is directed by Graham Harper, in which case he's obviously having a bad day.
So I don't think it is.
No.
Yeah, I can imagine Graham Harper would make this story a lot more interesting.
Make it more dynamic and make Omega look like a presence as opposed to, because the part of the problem is the costume could look imposing if they shot it from low angles and lit it darkly.
Part of the reason why I really like Revelation of the Daleks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shots that make it look big.
And it's that same sort of. The thing is about Omega is he has this big personality and this big look, both in this and in the Three Doctors. But why it works in the Three Doctors is he's quite understated in the way they handle him. If that makes sense, like
Yeah. He's like fat and sweaty.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It's all
Squishy.
Yeah.
God.
This does have some similar beats to Hellbent. Classic Time Lord villain, the Time Lords, being pushed aside for a companion story.
Yeah.
Granted, it's nowhere near.
Tegan's the Clara of this story.
Yeah, nowhere near as bad, but still similar elements.
Yeah.
It's also quite a humorless. That's part of it as well.
Yeah.
There's no humor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Davison era is very void of humor.
Yeah. And also, this particular Doctor doesn't lend himself to the story very well.
Yes.
Whereas if you had, like, Patrick Troughton, it'd be...
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Omega. Yeah. Omega controls the Matrix. Oh, dear. Oh, dear, oh, dear.
Jamie.
Doctor...
What's an Omega? Never heard of the beast.
Ooh, he's bleeding.
Ugh.
That's gross.
Maple syrup.
Yeah, like any other Doctor in this story. Like, I like Peter Davison, but the gentle character... the gentle character just doesn't quite fit the urgency of the story. It makes the story feel less epic. And like if you had John Pertwee in this story, or really any of the others, Colin Baker, as the Doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Omega.
Even if it was like a like for example, if you had David Tennant in the story, there's something about his Doctor where you always feel like there's a sense of urgency.
Yes. Whereas, and I don't put this down to Peter Davison as an actor, it's the writing of the character.
Yeah.
But it's just because
there's something about the 10th Doctor's facial expressions or something where you always feel like you have to, he's in danger or something.
Yeah. He always brings that spark.
Yeah.
This has a lot of the opposite problems to what a lot of Colin Baker's bad stories have, which is a really interesting story, but like a bland lead and a bland kind of execution. Whereas Colin Baker's stories, you have terrible stories, but really interesting, like a dynamic creativity in terms of both Colin Baker's performance and what's going on around him.
Yeah. It doesn't look scary enough
to
be an antimatter monster. It looks more,
Yeah.
Whoa. Jeez. That's gross. What's happening to him?
He's trying to become like a form of matter so he can come to Gallifrey, I think. It's as usual,
Yeah, I feel like there's something pathetic about this version of Omega.
Yeah. Whereas he's supposed to be this big, imposing... It doesn't... Beyond just the costume, the writing of the character does not resemble the one from the Three Doctors.
I mean, granted, this is a different writer, but still.
Absolutely, but still, like... Davros is pretty consistent.
Yeah,
even.
True. What?
He was tampering with the thing that...
Okay.
So the Australian guy got possessed so that he could put up this thing that would help make Omega able to come to reality, I think. I don't know.
Okay.
I think.
Whoa.
It's not permanent.
Well, it's going to be interesting when we get to a point where we watch one of these episodes and there's not cloning.
Yeah. There's not a double of the Doctor.
There's always fucking cloning. It's the most overused plot device.
It doesn't feel like a big deal that Omega's walking around the real world. It's
It's because he hasn't been...
built.
There's nothing about him in this story that's actually scary.
He's just been giving orders with a terrible design. Like, there's no oomph to him.
Yeah.
Biggest explosion this part of the universe has ever had to witness.
Precise size of Belgium. He looks like an Auton.
He looks like Steve Jobs. What the fuck?
What?
This is a Gallifrey story.
Yeah. Is Omega just gonna kill that child? See, if this had happened, if Omega had taken on the form of Peter Davison at the end of episode 2, and episode 3 was the Doctor facing Omega in this form, trying to find him, and then trying to face him in episode 4, it would have been a much more interesting story. Like, because this is an interesting idea, but it's just taken so long to get there, and there's no urgency anymore. This
feels like a very bland version of the Deadly Assassin. With
Yeah.
no threat.
Or creativity, really. It's...
Oh, here we go. So this is where it starts going wrong.
Yeah. And the thing is, Peter Davison was clearly having fun playing Omega, like looking evil.
Yeah.
Had they given him much more time to do stuff as opposed to just in the final episode, it would have been...
You're alert to antimatter.
Didn't he just explain this? Didn't he just explain that?
Too much running around.
This feels like a really wasted potential episode.
Yeah. This reminds me of kids' movies. You know, a lot of when people that are 13 years old make movies, they'll have like a very thin plot.
Yeah.
And then they'll fill out the time with lots and lots of running around.
Yeah, and lots of shots of just people walking and without any meaning or aim.
Yeah, and it would literally just be functional walking, and it's just not interesting.
Yeah. Also, the fact that the climax of this doesn't take place on Gallifrey is a bummer. So... that was so unnecessary. Come on.
Give me a quote.
That wasn't Peter Davison.
Didn't look like it, eh?
I think it was just because they had that shot where Peter Davison walks in. They couldn't. The story could have used more Colin Baker.
Yeah.
Maxwell just kind of stopped doing stuff.
This sequence is taking forever.
Yeah.
It's just been running around for 10 minutes.
Yeah. Like half the episode has just been them running around the streets of Amsterdam.
Where's the story? They could have achieved all of that in like 2 minutes max.
They could have had him, Omega... There could have been a whole interesting story about Omega dealing with coming to Earth.
Yeah.
There could have been a whole thing about that, but immediately he starts decomposing.
So what was the point of all that then?
The antimatter source is gone.
affection, Rachel. My hope is that he's find peace at last. It's been marvellous to see you again.
No, it hasn't.
Indeed. I've missed you.
No, I haven't.
I wish you didn't have to go back to your job.
I do.
What job? Didn't establish the attitude.
So it seems.
It wasn't exciting, this garden, was it?
No.
The other one was cheesy but fun.
Yeah.
This one was just plain and white.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Just.
Just running
similar
around.
to the Leisure Hive. The worst episode was the
Yeah.
last one. They just got to a point where they ran out of story and they just
Yeah.
didn't fucking run around it. It was terrible.
Running around Amsterdam.
Yeah.
I don't know what, let's run around Amsterdam.
And then they just shoot him and that's it.
That's it. So Omega, one of the most powerful characters in the Doctor Who legacy, just got taken out by being shot. It's,
I feel like this entire story was just a cock tease.
for a story that never happened,
Yeah.
or has yet to happen.
Well. Okay.
Recap.
Right. Okay. I'm not really sure where to start on this. Overall, briefly.
Continue.
Overall, just briefly, what's the overall feeling of Arc of Infinity?
Really, really, really interesting ideas that they did absolutely nothing with. They were all very it was so energy lacking. It was a complete just sort of through the motions. Oh yes, there's a mystery, and I think even if we hadn't known it was Omega, it still would have been incredibly dull and dragging your feet through the sand, very lethargic. It has the opposite problem of the Leisure Hive, where the Leisure Hive throws everything at you and it's really weird and creative. This is just like, it's very stale. I do like the ideas that were in it, and episodes 1 and 2 I would find much better had the payoff of Omega been way better, but the payoff of Omega was terrible. It was so bad that I just retroactively 1 and 2 just become naff, because as a whole the story is so lacking in any spark or any flair.
I feel like a lot of the interest in this story relies on something from the past. It's a very fan wanky story, and the disappointing thing is that with other fan wanky stories, at least it serves you, whereas this, it references the past but does absolutely nothing with it. It turns Omega into a very disappointing character, and I just this episode, like, it has so many things wrong with it, but it's very difficult to pinpoint, because it's not like, okay, for example, right, obviously a lot of people hate Love and Monsters because the Absorbal offers a terrible design, right? So that's something you can pinpoint exactly, like, that is terrible, right? That is terrible. The problem with Arc of Infinity is that there are so many different problems that make it mediocre. It's like an overall failure, I think. Yeah, and everything about this story lacked energy, and it lacked creativity, and it felt like Doctor Who went backwards with this story. It regressed in every sense. And as a season opener, a terrible opener. Yeah, I mean, I think this doesn't, like, if this wasn't, because this is the anniversary season, season 20. This doesn't excite me at all. to watch the rest of it, even though I know there are other stories in season 20 that I like Snake Dance, for example, was right after this. I really like Snake Dance. But after, I mean, if I was watching this at the time, I'd be like, gosh, really? Is that all you're gonna give us for this hyped up thing from the past? And it's just nothing.
A decade. He'd been off the screen.
Yeah, there had been a whole 10 years of hype for this story, and it just didn't deliver. What did you think of the Doctor in this episode?
He's just... Because Peter Davison's... Nothing wrong with his performance, but the writing of his character is he has none, really. At this point, there's very little flair to him, which I know was a deliberate move, but they still could have given him a distinct persona, but in every scene he's just kind of going through the motions, and there's nothing really dramatic or interesting about him. Even Tom Baker, when he in the Leisure Hive, when he was clearly uninterested, still was very funny because you could tell he was kind of taking the piss, like with the "we'll arrest the scarf then." That whole thing was interesting, whereas this Doctor lacked urgency. Like, I've said this before, I can't remember when I said it, but in this episode, whenever there's a scene with Colin Baker and Peter Davison on screen, my eyes are always fixed on Colin Baker. It's just there's nothing there for me to latch onto, really. At this point, I would like to state that Caves of Androzani is my favourite Classic Who story, so I don't dislike Peter Davison by any means. It's just in this particular narrative, he was quite meh.
It really felt like the Doctor's character in this was just some generic man, you know? And I think the lack of energy really let down the story, and part of it was the Doctor. It just seemed like he didn't care. And it's not like a Leisure Hive thing where Tom didn't care because in real life he wanted to get the fuck out of there. So you got him like staring at a screen like this, picking his nose and stuff. But in this story, it was the character that didn't take it seriously, you know?
Yeah, it just...
And it's just such an uninspired, you know, boring load of waffle, really. You know, they really took something that could have been great and made it into something not. And it didn't help that the Doctor wasn't engaging at all. Yeah, I don't know what to say other than that, because there's just not much to say about the Doctor, really. He's very forgettable here. What did you think of Nissa?
She was... I mean, there was a little moment, like, when she picked up the gun and the Doctor sort of... Like, that was a moment that I genuinely quite liked, where the Doctor had a bit of a personality coming through, and it sort of ties into Peter Davison's general era of shit just goes wrong around him, which leads to him becoming the nihilistic Sixth Doctor. But he... other than her picking up the gun and being an active player in the story, like, she's forward-thinking, she does stuff, she stands up to the Time Lords. Other than, like, mainly episode 2 where she does stuff, she's just kind of set dressing. She doesn't do much. Like, episode 2, she's quite... I think it's episode 2. Whenever it is that she stands up to the Time Lords and stands up to Maxwell and everything, she's good. She's good, but, like, other than that, she doesn't have much bearing on anything that's really going on, because she's just sort of waiting around for the Doctor, and she talks to that other Time Lord who's the one who figures out where the data sheet came from for the Doctor.
Yeah, so I did think it was nice that we finally got to see her with the Doctor without the other companions getting in front of her. And yeah, she was pretty good in episode 2. Not great, but she was good. I don't know if this is a fair criticism, but it's a nitpick I have, that it really annoys me the way she does action. It's very stiff. She's not the most coordinated actress, I don't think. And she does this thing where when she's gonna do something, right? She'll sort of like, oh, hang on. So I'll stand back here so you can see.
Yes.
She's like this.
Yeah.
So if she's standing somewhere, she'll go like this.
Mhm.
And then if she's gonna hold a gun, she goes like this.
Yeah, I see.
It's very
Wooden.
prepared and wooden.
Yeah.
There's nothing about it that feels like it feels like an act.
Yes.
Does that make sense? And I feel like a lot of the time with Nessa, it feels like an act, even though her character is actually doing stuff and making, she makes an impression, but it's just there's these small things about her acting that it just doesn't hit it for me. And I feel like her lack of presence, even though it does fit with the whole Fifth Doctor thing, they have like a good they have like very similar personalities, but I feel like her lack of impression is why a lot of people find her to be quite forgettable, especially when you've got, in almost every other story, you've got other companions with a far more energy, be it for better or worse. Like Tegan, for example, annoys me, but she actually is engaging. She gets involved in the story a lot more. I feel like even though it was nice to see her with the Doctor alone, I feel like it's a shame that it had to be this story, because this story just lacked energy. And it would have been nice to see her do something in another story. I'm pretty sure it's an Earthshock where she gets like left behind for like half the story, and it just seems so pointless. Yeah. Similar to the Doctor, there's not a lot to say about her. I'll let you have a good crack at this one. What did you think of Omega in this story?
So, I love the Time Lord lore, and I've read a lot of these comic books and other things, and just the wiki and a whole bunch of stuff and just obviously watching the show, I'm really interested in the Time Lord lore, particularly Omega and Rassilon. And Omega and the Three Doctors is amazing. He's this presence, and him bouncing off Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee is immensely entertaining, and he's sophisticated. Whereas in this, he seemed kind of... There was just no urgency to anything. It was just so flat, and they built him up and built him up and built him up and built him up and built him up, and did fuck all with them. It was really deflating, because I love Omega and the Three Doctors, and I love the concept of Omega and the idea of Omega, and I do hope that someday he comes back to the show, just so this isn't his last on-screen appearance, because him being someone who just gets shot and then fades away is a fucking disgrace.
Yeah, this was, for me, Omega was incredibly disappointing in Arc of Infinity. This character that I've heard so much about was unbelievably bland and just generic.
It didn't need to be Omega.
Yeah, it didn't need to be Omega. This could have been...
They could have made up a new one.
Yeah, they could have just made up some random character. But although, to be fair, no one would have been interested in this story if they didn't have that build-up, though. So it would have ended up being even worse if there was just a generic villain, I think. But then again...
But the issue with that argument is that Omega was turned into a generic villain, and they did nothing with him. Like I was saying, whilst we were just changing over the batteries of the camera in between the final episode and this, is I wish that we'd had more of Peter Davison playing Omega, and had Omega revealed to be the villain at the end of part 1. Part 2, Omega does his thing, and the cliffhanger for part 2 is he becomes the Peter Davison one. Part 3 is the chase, part 4 is the confrontation. And so you get more of a character from Omega beyond just generic, aha!
Now we know that they had access to the TARDIS, right? What if they searched through the TARDIS and they found a matching uniform? No, not uniform, but costume, like... So they found the same clothes that the Fifth Doctor wears, right? They could have done this whole thing where Omega has control of Nissa or Tegan or whatever, because he's playing as the Doctor, right? And they could have done a whole storyline with that, but instead, all they did with it was had this whole episode where for about 10 minutes, which is part 4, they were just literally just running around Holland, wasting time, and then it just ends.
And the thing about that is it's not it's not time saving either, because you could just shoot in the TARDIS set with Peter Davison and it would be interesting and engaging, because he would be playing Omega pretending to be the Doctor, which would be an interesting thing. And instead we got 10 minutes of just running around just Holland for no reason other than just
Yeah, it was a very the last episode just had so much padding, and it felt like it was completely wasting all the potential the story had. And the fact that Omega just dies by being shot and that's it is just so disappointing.
Better than being told to fuck off the planet and just not coming back, but not much better, granted. They're both pretty terrible.
Well, I mean, yeah, because like Omega had all this build-up, 3 episodes of build-up, and then it just all ends very quickly.
He does nothing.
Yeah, he does nothing, What a waste. What did you think of Tegan returning?
I think that's going to be my reaction to most things in this episode. It wasn't poorly handled by any means. It just, again, there was no urgency, no energy. Like, this dude who was with Colin, her cousin, he other than that one scene where he shouted at the receptionist and she's like, oh, there's been a phone call for him. His cousin's coming in. Other than that, there was no anything. And then there was no, and even Tegan thinking about her cousin, she was really like, oh, that's a shame, as opposed to being like, oh god, we gotta go and find my cousin. And then when they found him, then Omega looked really awkward in the doorway, and then there was the pterodactyl guard thing, and it was just, Tegan left like little to no impact on me.
I feel like the entire purpose of this was just so that they could have her in Snake Dance, because obviously she has the connection with the Mara, and they had to find a way to introduce her in this story, and she just didn't fit. It just didn't work. Yeah.
They could have fixed it by the Doctor going back to Earth, finding Tegan, and then suddenly the Omega possession things happens in front of Tegan and Nissa. Then they're there. Then immediately they're there for the rest of the story. You don't have to have this whole subplot set in Amsterdam. Because that felt just so weird that you had this interesting sort of political conspiracy on Gallifrey that was leading to Omega. And then here, this weird gateway just randomly for no... Did they explain why he chose Amsterdam? It felt like they had permission to shoot in Amsterdam. They're like, hey, let's make a story in Amsterdam, which had no bearing on the plot. And in fact, the location took away from the story as opposed to adding to it.
I thought that the Amsterdam presence in this story was pointless and not interesting at all. I didn't understand why they had it in it anyway. But I guess it was just to reintroduce Tegan, and they had to come up with a whole storyline around it. Yeah.
Omega showing up in Australia would have been cool.
Yeah, imagine if the subplot of Arc of Infinity took place in Brisbane. Yeah. Okay, obviously we need to tackle one of the highlights of the story, and that was Colin Baker.
The best thing about this four-parter, he actually had very little to do, but he left the biggest presence because he's just such a dynamic actor. And even the character Maxwell, he was a commanding officer who took no shit, yet he was interested in finding the right thing. He wasn't corrupt at all. He was just very strict and to the point, and Colin played it perfectly. And whenever he was on screen, I was smiling because he was just so entertaining. Even in the ridiculous costume, even when he was wearing the peacock feathers, he just had a presence, and he was so much fun to watch.
It felt like he was the only sense of 80s we got in this episode, and the rest of it was just bland nonsense. Yeah. Obviously Colin Baker is a great actor and was the best element to Arc of Infinity, and I was really disappointed that he was left out of the whole conclusion, because he just got forgotten, that character, and it's a shame. Any other characters we want to touch on? There was a few. There was quite a big cast of characters, but a lot of them were quite brief.
Yeah. Like the two main ones, I've forgotten their names, but the Michael Goff character and the other Time Lord who was outwardly, like, they made it look like Michael Goff was the good guy and the other guy was the bad guy, and then it turned out there were blurred lines in there in terms of shades of grey in terms of the morality. And I found that really interesting, but they didn't do much with it. Like, when it all got revealed, like the political grey area of everything, and President Barusa was there, and it was the big confrontation. Then suddenly, zap! Oh, by the way, Omega's back! Ah! And that was it. And it was.
I thought the whole twist around the Michael Goff character was very strange and unnecessary. Like how they made him evil, then not evil, then he was, then he wasn't, and then he died, and it just felt very strange. Like it's just like they put it in there just to subvert your expectations, and I didn't see the point of it. Yeah,
it was just very. Again, it was like the political interest and espionage side of it could have been really interesting, and on paper is a really interesting idea, but just the execution of it was so lackluster that it just fell on its face, and just the big reveal that Omega was back and the fact that Michael Goff was working for him and he's like, we need to resurrect him, was just very, okay, what's next? It was very just whatever.
I was mildly entertained by the White Sox, Yellow Sox characters, but at the end of the day, the actors for them weren't very good. They were very strange, just quite wooden. I don't understand what it is. Maybe it's just something to do with the way J&T hired actors or something, but it just feels like from the last era to this one, a lot of the actors just aren't on top form as much as a lot of the other eras. Like, it feels like they just hire anyone, and I don't get that. Yeah.
They sort of feel like, hey, you want to be on Doctor Who? Kind of like, because it's a British icon, people are like, yeah, absolutely. And they just hire the cheapest option rather than the best option. Yeah. Granted, I understand sort of on the Gallifrey thing, they had a lot of actors who were kind of name actors. Like Colin Baker was a well-known theatre actor at that time, and that kind of, and obviously Michael Goff, and the others I'm not familiar with, but I'm sure because they are, yes, no, but I'm sure, but even, yeah.
Actually, there was that lady Time Lord character that got a few lines, and I was interested in her, but they didn't do anything with her at all. Yeah.
Because she was, again, it's the politicals, like if they cut out the Amsterdam story and fleshed out the political espionage of Gallifrey more, that would be really interesting, but they didn't do anything with it.
Yeah. I feel like this should have been a mid-season niche episode where they really go hard on the politics, as opposed to whatever they did here. So I think I can't I can't actually think of any other characters. Do you want to just finish off your thoughts on the plot?
The biggest example of wasted potential I've seen in a long time. So many interesting elements that they did nothing with any of them. And as I said, part 1 should have been pretty much as it was, but then Omega was revealed at the end of that. Part 2, Omega came out. Part 3, it was him dealing with being real and letting Peter Davison really revel in the sinister side of the role. Because that one little scene where the little kid bumps into Omega and Omega smiles at him, like that's the most character we got out of Omega in the whole story. Whereas if we had more of that kind of thing, it would have made Omega an interesting character. And potentially we could find a way to make us sympathize with Omega. That he just wants to feel again. He just wants to belong in the universe again. And then part 4 could have been the confrontation and had a much better ending than the gun thing. But the actual story was a mess. It was a whole bunch of what-ifs as opposed to what is.
Yeah, I would say out of all the Gallifrey stories that I've seen, this is probably the second weakest one. Not the weakest. It's kind of spoilers for the question at the end of the video, but you know how we feel about that one. This is not as bad as that one, but I would say out of all the ones I've seen, it's the weakest aside from that one. Yeah. Very, very uninspiring. Makes Gallifrey look uninteresting.
It makes it look pedestrian.
Right, so here we go with the reception. Radio Times said an excruciatingly dull season opener set in Amsterdam and on Gallifrey features Doctor Who's most absurd monster, and they gave it a 1 star.
Accurate.
That's pretty accurate. The always unreliable IMDb gave part 1 a 6.9 and the rest of them 7.1. Completely disagree. I thought part 1 was the best and part 4 was the worst, not the other way around. But then again, is IMDb's ratings of Classic Who really that accurate? Because
anyone can affect the rating on that, and there's not a problem with that. It just means that there's a whole bunch of different dissenting opinions and everything, so it makes it a bit more of a boiling pot.
And I get the feeling that IMDb is not the kind of place that a lot of classic viewers go. Yeah. I don't know, I just get the feeling it's not the best outlook on Classic Who. Right, so the writer of this story was Johnny Byrne. Byrne was the most prolific scriptwriter for the first series of Space 1999. He also wrote The Keeper of Traken and Warriors of the Deep. Warriors of the Deep is on our list. And that's the season opener after this one, the season 21 opener.
Oh god, I've seen that.
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it. God, another example of wasted potential. The Keeper of Traken's quite a popular story, though. It's the one where they bring back the Master. Yeah. He was responsible for creating the character of Nissa. That's interesting. He gets to write a story where she's almost the only companion aside from the end. In 1990, Byrne wrote a script for a film based on Doctor Who. But due to a legal dispute between BBC and the production company, however, the film was not made.
I could see how, based on this structure, if it was just 1 hour and a half story, he may have made something very good, but it's possible to say without seeing the script.
The director was Ron Jones. You fucked up, mate. He also directed Black Orchid, Time Flight, Frontios, Vengeance on Varos, and Mind Warp.
What a lineup! The one that jumps out at me of that is Mind Warp, but I guess because the... And Vengeance on Varos. Yeah. No, those the 2 Colin Baker ones on that list, like, I'm not sure how much of that is just the imagination of those scripts as well, that just lends them... Because this, to be fair to Ron Jones, this script was pretty uninspired, and he, like, I mean, surely the script for part 4 was probably only like 10 pages, and like, because there was just probably 1 page of run.
I've seen Black Orchid and I've seen Vengeance on Varos, and the direction of Arc of Infinity is far worse than those 2.
Example in The Leisure Hive, terrible story, but at least the direction was creative and they tried to do something with this weird dumpster fire of a story.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely the direction left a very sour taste in my mouth, particularly part 4. Just an appalling set of extremely generic shots. Yeah. And you would have expected it, with character direction, right? You would have expected at least for him to make it more interesting. I wonder what the script looked like for that part 4 with them just running around.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. It's just...
Who knows?
Maybe it was an unfinished script.
Possibly, but we'll have to find out. The music was Roger Lim. I didn't really notice the music that much in this.
The only sort of piece of... I can't sort of... It's not in my head, but I remember noticing it, was the piece of music that played when Maxwell was ever marching people around. And I'm not sure if that was just his theme or if it's a theme that's been used before on Gallifrey or whatever. But that's the only piece of music that I remember noticing. Other than that, nothing jumped out at me.
He also did the music for The Keeper of Traken, Four to Doomsday, Black Orchid, Time Flight, Terminus, The Caves of Androzani, and Revelation of the Daleks.
Immediately, he's got a tick in my book for doing the music for Caves of Androzani. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird though when I look at these lists of episodes that this director and then the producer have done. It's almost like in the Davison era they weren't that great, but then in the Colin, when they get to like the end of it feels like it gets a lot more glossy, you know. Lim also contributed music to the television series The Justice Game, Aliens in the Family, The December Rose, Think About, The Box of Delights, Kevin and Co., Martin Luther, Heretic, Storytime, and the Look and Read serials Fairground, Dark Towers, Sky Hunter, The King's Dragon, Cloudburst, Geordie Racer, Through the Dragon's Eye, and Earth Warp. Don't know any of those. Right. Just hold this for a second.
Trivia.
The working titles for this story were The Time of Niman and The Time of Omega. Well, if they called it The Time of Omega, it would have spoiled the whole thing. Peter Davison also played Omega in Part 4 when Omega's body becomes a replica of the Doctor's, but was credited on screen only as the Doctor. Okay. Maya Wolf, the hostel receptionist, is credited as first receptionist in the combined Radio Times cast for Parts 3 and 4.
But she was only in Part 1 and 2, wasn't she? Or even just 1?
No, wasn't it a male for Part 1 and 2?
No, there was the woman. There was the woman first, and then there was the guy.
John Nathan Turner wearing a sheepskin jacket appears on screen from behind the telephone box in Part 4, trying to persuade passers-by not to get into shot. God. The Dutch street organ that transfixes Omega for a moment during Part 4 is playing the song Tulips from Amsterdam, the same music is heard during the establishing shot of Amsterdam at the start of Part 1. Ah, okay. Ian Collier takes the role of Omega, originally played by Stephen Thorne in The Three Doctors. To keep the return of Omega a surprise, Collier was billed in the end credits as the Renegade for Parts 1 and 2, with the billing becoming Omega Parts 3 and 4. The Radio Times program listing for Part 1 was accompanied by a black and white head and shoulders photograph of Lord President Barusa, and the Doctor labelled New Season with the accompanying caption, Summoned to Gallifrey, planet of all Time Lords, the Lord President tells the Doctor of his future.
Well, I suppose he does, because he's like, you're going to be executed, boy.
Every story during Season 20 featured a component of the story from the show's past. For this serial, it was Omega who last faced the first 3 incarnations of the Doctor in the 10th anniversary story. Tegan is the first companion to have rejoined the Doctor on his travels after having departed, though she only departed in the previous story. Time Flight. Barusa has now ascended to Lord President. So he was in The Deadly Assassin and The Invasion of Time.
Oh, right.
But he wasn't the Lord President in those stories. Leela has married Andred, for whom she left the Fourth Doctor to be with in The Invasion of Time. So I haven't seen that yet, but I will. The Doctor again enters the Matrix. So that's another thing that's disappointing about the story, because even though the Matrix was kind of cool, compared to the Deadly Assassin, it's nothing. The Deadly Assassin Matrix was unbelievably cool. Yeah. It was like a psychedelic Black Ops.
It was like the classic series Heaven Sent.
Pretty much.
Which is a brilliant episode.
Well, I mean, most people like Heaven Sent, don't they?
Really? I've heard some very negative...
Oh yeah, there's certainly people that don't like it, but the majority of fans tend to give Heaven Sent a very positive review from my experience. Omega also appears in the audio Omega, which takes place immediately after the events of this story from the perspective of the Fifth Doctor. And from what I've heard, the audio Omega is a lot better than this story.
Any one of those single, like Davros and Master and Omega. I've heard Davros and Master. I have not heard Omega yet, but I've read that it's very, very good.
Well, I'm sure you'll listen to it at some point, knowing how much you enjoy that character. Well, you did.
I enjoyed half of it.
If it's on the same level as Davros and Master, though.
Everyone should go listen to Davros immediately.
A traitor is found to be at work on Gallifrey, not for the first time. Thalia comments on the Doctor's inability to return Romana to Gallifrey. The Doctor tells her that she chose to stay in E-Space. That's from the episode Warrior's Gate. That was an episode that I considered putting on this list, but it was ranked very highly in the DWM. So, I don't know. Should we have Warrior's Gate on this list? Because I've heard some people don't like it, but who knows. The dress worn by Nyssa at Cranlake Hall is seen in her room. Oh, right, so...
When they go into that little...
Yeah, so she wore it in Black Orchid. This is one of the moments during the Doctor's timeline in which one incarnation of Clara Oswald comes across the Fifth Doctor or trying to undo damage done by the Great Intelligence. From the name of the Doctor.
I know.
Zorak notes how violence has erupted on Gallifrey every time the Doctor returns there, the War Games, the Deadly Assassin, the Invasion of Time. True. The Doctor would take on Maxwell's form during his next regeneration. Awesome. Awesome. Peter Davison and Eric Sayward were both baffled why the serial was set in Holland. Well, so was I. Yeah. Colin Baker was originally a possible for the Castellan, but was in the end cast as Commander Maxwell. Interesting. Third appearance of the Doctor's mentor, Barusa. According to Peter Davison, Leonard Sachs had serious trouble remembering his lines. It was suggested that he be replaced by Bernard Archer by John Nathan Turner vetoed this. Second guest role for Michael Gough. Obviously, he played the Celestial Toymaker in the William Hartnell story. Ooh, Peter Cushing was considered for the role of Barusa.
They should have cast Peter Cushing. That would have been... That would have been great. Yeah. Like... That non-canon Doctor Who movie is so entertaining because Peter Cushing is wonderful.
Imagine if the story had Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Peter Cushing. Wow. The Lord President was originally nameless, but at a late stage was decided to turn the character into Barusa, who had featured in the two series The Deadly Assassin and The Invasion of Time. Leonard Sachs was very keen to work on this story as he had not done any TV drama since 1976. Maybe that's why he had trouble remembering his lines, because he was out of shape. Both Michael Gough and Elspeth Gray have said in interviews that the script baffled them. Understandable. Ian Collier was cast because it felt like he looked like Peter Davison. So they cast Omega because he looked like Peter Davison. So they were more worried about...
But he was... For 95% of the running time, he was under a helmet. What? That's so...
So what you should have done is have Ian Collier be the body double and voice over the original Omega. If you can't get him, get another actor, but... Cast the character by the best actor, not the best body double. That's just stupid in my opinion. I mean, he didn't terribly act it or anything.
No,
but
that's just
you don't do that.
Because surely they knew he would be in the helmet. Because even if they hadn't redesigned him at this point when they were casting it, even if they were going to go based on the old design, he'd be in a triangle helmet for the whole episode. So, why? That baffles me.
One of the locations used for shooting was... One of the locations used for shooting in Amsterdam was Prisongracht, the street that housed the attic Anne Frank and her family hidden from the Nazis.
Well, that's intense. Wow. That's the most interesting thing about this episode.
The next thing is the most interesting thing. Colin Baker was frequently told to tone down his performance. He claimed that he played the role not as a supporting character, but as if he believed he were the main character in his own story.
As he should. And he was the most entertaining. Like, I remember, because I went to a convention where he was, and he said apparently John Nathan Turner came up to him and said, "You do realise this is not Maxwell Who, but Doctor Who, right?"
The scenes set in Amsterdam were originally set in London. So this is an interchangeable setting.
Surely it would have been cheaper for them to shoot in London as well.
Assistant floor manager Lynn Richards recommended Colin Baker for the role of Commander Maxwell based on his performance in Blake Seven's City at the Edge of the World. Although eager to appear in Doctor Who, Baker was disappointed at the thought that he could now never play the Doctor himself.
Oh, poor Baker. What a shame, never being able to play the Doctor. Poor man.
Johnny Byrne originally permitted a storyline entitled The Time of Niman. This involved the Doctor suffering nightmares about his regeneration, which were actually a precursor to the arrival in our universe of an entity called the Avatar, who takes on the Doctor's form and goes to Amsterdam, operating there as Niman, a name recycled from the Keeper of Traken. The Avatar begins to take control of human minds, striving to create a form in which it will be able to permanently maintain its existence. The Doctor and Nyssa discover Niman's plot where they land in a future version of Amsterdam, which is populated by robot guards called Sweepers, the elderly resistors, and barbaric anarchs. Realizing that history has been altered, they travel back in time to present-day Amsterdam. There, the Doctor discovers that Time Lord regeneration is the mechanism by which the Avatar is made manifest. The Avatar is defeated when the Doctor relives his own recent regeneration.
That would have been an interesting story. Like, a lot going on, but at least it wouldn't have had the disappointment of Omega being a naff villain. Like, that concept, at least it would have been a new villain and something interesting, and the Doctor having nightmares about his regeneration sounds like a cool thing.
It actually does sound quite interesting, and it would have utilized Amsterdam a bit more. But, whatever. Many in the production team were unhappy with Johnny Byrne's handling of the Amsterdam setting. Although the writer had tried to justify the location by including elements such as a fusion booster which only functions below sea level, it was felt that Byrne had not made Amsterdam sufficiently integral to the story. No obvious solution to this problem presented itself, however, and so no significant changes were made to Byrne's scripts.
That whole Amsterdam thing was a waste, and they could see it in the production. This was kind of like a doomed production from the start, it seems.
In the 2003 poll, so obviously this just would have been all of Classic Who, out of 163 stories, it got 134.
I'm sure it's better than some of the ones that it was ranked beneath, but like...
I mean, obviously, we're going to have a look at the actual 2014 DWM to see where it is ranked now. I'm very interested to see. But that number sounds about right to me. I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds about right to me, based on all of Classic Who. Okay, so, the viewership. What was it that the Leisure Hive got? It was like, it started around 6 million and ended about 4.5. So, what do you think Arc of Infinity Part 1 got?
About 5?
7.2.
Oh, wow. That's good.
So it actually went back up a bit in the Davison era. But then again, granted, there was that whole thing in the Leisure Hive being broadcast the same time as, what was it called?
It was Buck Rogers in the 25th century. Yeah.
Episode 2 got 7.3, so slightly up.
Yeah, good. Because there was probably that whole speculation.
Also, This story got more viewership than Bad Wolf.
That's disheartening.
Part 3 got 6.9, so went down. And then part 4, 7.2, so it went back up again.
There must have been something on.
Yeah, must have
Like a
been.
football match or something.
Yeah, yeah. Let's have a look at where it is on the 2014 DWM. Out of 241 stories, Arc of Infinity is 221.
Oh, it's still pretty much
Very...
the same.
No, it's much lower than the Leisure Hive. The Leisure Hive was 174. So this is significantly lower. This
I can kind of see why.
This story is ranked below Love and Monsters, and below the Web Planet, and it's ranked above the Underwater Menace. Not sure about that. The Underwater Menace is a terrible story, but it's entertaining because it's so stupid.
Same with what's in it.
Then again, it is pretty terrible. It's ranked above the Censorites. I can see why, but I feel like the Censorites had a bit more creativity. But I can also see... I can see why. It's ranked above the Curse of the Black Spot. Yeah, I agree with that. I hate the Curse of the Black Spot. And then below that is like the worst of the worst. Yeah, I think that's... I don't think they were off with the ranking on this one. I think the Leisure Hive was very overrated, whereas I think this being where it is,
Pretty much perfectly.
yeah, it's like sort of near the bottom.
But not offensively bad, just very
Yeah,
bad.
right. Okay. So, give your conclusion and a rating out of 10 for the Arc of Infinity.
Just a complete waste of potential. Really cool ideas that were poorly executed. Needed at least another draft of all the scripts. And overall, I'm just going to give it a 3.5 out of 10. It was just really, the whole way through.
So, I was disappointed by this story. I wasn't horrifically damaged by it or anything,
Yes.
but it really fell flat for me, and I think part of what you have to criticize about this story is the fact that it's supposed to be quite a serious, big deal, and it just wasn't. And I feel like they really wasted a lot of what they could have done with it. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. It's painfully mediocre, and I think a 4 is fitting of the rating. I rank it slightly more above the Leisure Hive because I think there is still some merit to it.
There are better ideas in it.
Yeah, and the Leisure Hive really disappointed me at the end. Like, even though this did disappoint me in the end, like, pretty badly, I think the Leisure Hive was such a clusterfuck of elements that it's more damaging to the viewer.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously we don't think it's worse than Hellbent because it's not even. I don't even think it's worse than Leisure Hive.
It's pretty damaging to Omega, but it's not a...
Yeah.
Not terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
it is, but not that terrible.
Right. So now we're gonna find out the next story we're gonna be watching. Which Doctor are you?
I want the 6th Doctor. I want Colin. I want Colin Baker.
Here we go. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. It's not the 6th Doctor, but this is going to be an interesting one. It's a Pertwee story, and it has the Master in it. It's Colony in Space.
Ooh, fantastic.
Have you seen Colony in Space?
I don't think I have.
It's towards the end of season 8. Yeah. It's in between the Claws of Axos and the Demons. Right. Yeah, so I've never seen it, so that should be very, very interesting. See you next time.